So the do's and don'ts when it comes to collaborating with other artists. So you might be a producer, you might be an artist yourself, and this is the stuff that you need to know before you dive in. All right, so first and foremost, communication is definitely going to be key because, when it comes to what are we doing? What are we doing? What's the timeline? I literally was working with someone one time. I'm an independent artist, I have a record label, but I'm working with someone and, he was just trying some different stuff with some vocals I had laid down. And at some point in the session, he pulls out his phone and he starts like discreetly recording. I knew what he was doing. And he starts asking me questions like, so is it cool that I'm using your vocals and you're consenting to me using like I'm like, what are you doing? What are you so I kind of called him out and that was just really awkward. So communication, if you is key if you were trying to get permission, I guess, to use someone's vocals. So there's that. So number two, when it comes to the do's and don'ts of collaborating, and I guess the summary of that is don't try to record someone secretly. But number two is to define roles. Okay, so especially like even with That Orko and I, That Orko is my music producer, and defining roles is important, right? So when I met him, I was still producing my own stuff, or at least assisting in the process, and a part of our adjustment in the relationship was that he's now the producer, and so I think it's important to carve that out as far as who does what, because even Pharrell, right? So in his writing group and producing group, I mean they've had to do the same thing, right?
So you're referring to the Neptunes. So
Yeah.
like Pharrell and Chad, so they have their kind of respective roles where Chad kind of works on a lot of the drums and a lot of like the synth work and stuff, and Pharrell comes up with some of the melodies and the songwriting and just kind of like the bigger vision and bringing it together. I mean, they'll interchange and obviously they work together and play other instruments too together, but yeah, I mean, just kind of having what the roles are and everybody kind of knowing what their strengths and weaknesses are, what they bring, and all that still falls in with communication. You have to communicate, when you're defining your roles, just say what your expectations for things are. It's so important to know what you're getting yourself into when you're even starting the process, like like you were saying, when you're defining the roles or communicating, because you need to know if this is just for fun we're doing, are we doing this for
Sure.
something,
Yeah.
like you because and I know it's hard when you're like, I just want to vibe, man. I just want to jam, and that's cool. But that's because you want to just keep things relaxed so you can have your creative process going. But there still has to be some structure because if something great comes out of it, it can get complicated. If just protect yourself as far as that.
Yeah,
What do you
for
think?
sure. All right, so on the do's and don'ts, one, communication is key. Two, define roles. And then we're going to make sure to set deadlines. If you are
Yes,
trying to be
yes.
professional, you need to have an idea of what the hell you're doing and so you don't waste your time, right? So, having some kind of like release plan, especially if you're independent, right? And you reverse engineer. You go, I want the song to be out on this certain date. So you just set a deadline. And then you reverse engineer. So that means I have to get my song done to the mixing, to the mastering guy or whatever. And then I need to send it to the distributor because they always want to have your song at least 4 to 6 weeks ahead of time, which most of us don't do. But, as far as you can muster, then you have a deadline for when you need to submit through Spotify for artists for
Mhm,
playlist consideration. So,
mhm.
setting deadlines is really key because also, we're creatives, all right? So for those of us who just want to make the music, we forget that we need to put it out and we need to push it and we need to do all the things.
No, that's incredibly important, and you should always be thinking about those things, and like pretend like even if you're not ready for it, like pretend you have a release that you're trying to release, and just kind of set your timetable out right now, so you know what it looks like. So I need about so after all my math of what I think I need to do, I know I need about 2 months from a song from when I record a song and it's finished to when it's done. Anywhere from 2 to 3 months is how long my plan is. So it's like you're kind of thinking of those things ahead of time when you're talking to if you're an artist talking to a producer and you're recording vocals. Even the expectation of, are you going to give me a rough mix of this today? Are you going to give me so you kind of have, am I going to be working on this, communicating the kind of things you'll need, if you'll need an instrumental to practice it ahead of time, or whatever it is, whatever your situation is, goes back to communication.
Yeah. Yeah, and then also on the list when it comes to pros, and cons of just collaboration is that, are you open to feedback? Okay, so we kind of get our feelings hurt. I definitely have had my fair share of when I've been even when I did some gigs where I'd be hired as a singer. So I'd come in and I would do top lines. So either I was being featured as Miss Krystle, so I'm singing, I'm coming up with the lyrics, I'm coming up with the melodies, and then I record it and then I send it to the producer. Or in other instances, producers are trying to sell their music, and so they just need a vocalist to come in and lay down some stuff. So in all these situations, you're working with different people and everyone wants to give you their opinion. Okay. And it doesn't always feel great if they're like, sing it this way, sing it that way. Oh, it's too much of this. Or maybe they're kissing your ass and they're being too nice. And you feel like they're not being
Right.
genuine. So being open to feedback, I think is really good, but it can be tough because sometimes you have someone who's just kind of being a jerk.
No, absolutely. And that's again goes to communication and when you're getting to know the people that you're working with. You could be working with the most talented people in the world, but they're assholes. And it's like, you're thinking about your experience in the studio, you're thinking about your process, you're thinking about the energy that's going out on the track. And I think that, you know, even as a producer, when I get criticism, sometimes I can get in my feelings and it's not a great thing. And that's the one thing when you're doing collaborations is you just can't be in your feelings. One
Well,
way
and
you can,
how do you overcome that?
it's tough. You have to, what I try to do is just keep everything in perspective, right? So at this point I've released so many songs and and I love them all and I'm attached to them all. But at some point, like I have to realize that this isn't forever. This isn't my defining moment in life. I gotta make this the best experience. I want to get everybody's goal on a song, whether you agree with their opinions or not, is everybody just wants the song to be dope. That's the whole reason why everybody's there. So nobody's coming from it from a weird place usually.
Yeah,
Um,
but the message can get lost if someone, let's say, speaks out of anger. At the end of the day,
Sure,
all they
sure.
want is for it
So
to
it's
be
important
good,
not to
but
be in your feeling. That's what I'm saying. So
yeah.
if you can let go of some of those things and realize that and just be open to suggestions and kind of have that free kind of thinking and remembering that this is a collaboration. This isn't either your defining message that's going to happen. This is something that you're working on to see if it works. Who knows? It might not work and then you move on to the next collaboration. But just to say like the hardest thing that everybody needs to do is just try to stay out of their feelings because when we bring our egos into a studio of a collaboration, nobody wins. And that's the hardest thing to do, but it's something that we need to be conscious of when we go into a studio with somebody else, especially if they're new. Like you don't want to just that's how you'll get a reputation right off the bat is if you it's not even with somebody you've been working with for a long time so they've seen you on your best days and now they're kind of catching you on a bad day. So
Yeah.
just try to
All
keep
right.
your
So,
energy and your good ego or your ego at the door.
yeah. So then, with all those pros and, when it comes to collaborating, these are the best tips to kind of keep in mind. I'll also add, you got to make sure you have a written agreement. Okay. So if you're going to collaborate with someone, all kinds of bad things can happen if you just don't have a contract. And,
Yeah.
even if you're looking at it from a financial standpoint, if you didn't take the time to get a template, to get even if you didn't hire an attorney, you just did it yourself, you're going to pay 10 times more dealing with a problem than if you had just hired an attorney. And most of the time, you can even find a template through Google if it's that serious. But really, you need to make sure you have some kind of a written agreement so that, you have all the main terms worked out and that you can have clarity on what should happen when someone doesn't do what they said they were going to do.
Very important. I mean, we have tons of agreements between us over various projects and stuff like that. Alan wants to know is getting to know the people first before working with them the best way. And I would say not necessarily. Like, I think sometimes when you're working with complete strangers, you're going to get people at their best at first. People are going to put their best foot forward. They might even be more professional. If it's just one of your friends and maybe there's other personality conflicts and everyone's comfortable because they're friends and stuff, it could be really good, but could also go the other way too, because everyone's a little more comfortable with each other. They're not necessarily putting their best foot forward because they're your friends. If they're a casual acquaintance, maybe it's just really who you think is going to be a good fit and where you guys have the
Yeah,
same vision.
I would say do a little toe in the water project. This is what I have done for the majority of my career, and boy, has it paid off. Before anyone, a collaborator, a music video director, a producer, put a toe in the water and do something very small together because that's how you get to know them, right? Having a quick call or a coffee, that's not going to do it. Actually try a simple project and see how do they follow through? How do they communicate? Are they willing to do a contract? Like all the things. And then if it's a good fit, you're like, hell yeah, let's do that music video. Hell yeah, let's do that album. So in a way, I disagree a little, which is you need to get to know people first, Yes, but you can do it by actually doing something together.
Yeah, like